Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic for you today, one of our favorites. Let's do it. What's the scariest or creepiest thing you've seen in a national forest or national park? Please remember to like, share, hype, comment, listen and ask for shoutouts, and subscribe.
This happened on private property, but it's a creepy story that took place in the woods, so it kinda qualifies. Plus, this morning was opening day for deer season, and we were deer hunting when it happened. My cousin owns land in western Wisconsin, where there's lots of hills and lots of deer. It's tradition for all of us to hunt on his property. My dad, cousin, and all their friends pitched in to build a hunting shack on the property and put up tree stands. We hunt on a schedule, so none of us hunt in the same area at the same time, both for our safety and in hopes of getting a deer. My dad and I took an ATV and headed up a hillside. The sun wasn't quite up yet, and we wanted to get set for sunrise. We marked which hill we were going up on the schedule inside the hunting shack. Nobody else was there yet, but we marked it anyways in case my cousin and his daughter showed up. We waited until about 9 a.m. and didn't see a thing, not even as much as a squirrel. We decided to go get some coffee to warm up and then head back out. I followed my dad down the path back to the ATV, and we'd stopped every so often to listen for deer. The only noises I heard were my footsteps and my dad's. About halfway to the ATV, I heard something else. It only happened when my dad and I walked. When my dad and I walk during deer hunting, I mimic his footsteps so we make less noise. I sleep at the same time as him. However, something behind me was making noise. It was like something was mimicking my footsteps. I spun around and peered into the trees. The sun still wasn't over the top of the hill yet, so we were in quite a bit of shade. I didn't see anything, so I continued to follow my dad down the hill, but I heard it again. This time, I turned around when we were still walking, and I saw something duck behind a tree. A pale face poked out from about 30 yards up the hill and hid behind the tree again. It poked out again, and this time stayed staring down at us. I stopped and hit my dad's shoulder. He turned and saw it too. "Get to the four-wheeler," he whispered, and I didn't hesitate. I stared it down as my dad started up the ATV, and as we departed, the face's dark little shoulder came out from behind the tree, followed by the rest of its gnarled, malformed body. My dad hit the throttle, and we got back to the hunting shack as soon as we could. Nobody else was there, so we got in the truck and left. I haven't been in those woods since. My dad was, and got a deer this morning, and acts like this never happened. I still think about it far too often. I was driving home from Yosemite 4 years ago, and I stopped on the side of the road to go pee, and then heard birds in the distance completely stop chirping. It was around 5 p.m. by the way. I knew that a bear was nearby, so I cut it short and started to walk back to my car, which was like 30 feet away. Just as I turned around to walk back, I heard an insanely loud sound that was like a mix between a scream and an air raid siren. It sounded really close, and I knew for a fact that it wasn't a bear or cougar anymore, and I've never heard something so strange and loud. So I ran as fast as I can back to my truck and started it. Right before I drove off, I heard it again, but it was even louder, and it sounded even more creepy. I still think about it until this day, and I still don't know what kind of creature it could have been. Can someone please convince me that what I heard was normal, or if it was some kind of cryptid? Please help. I'm terrified to go in the woods. I was traveling solo around the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State and making various stops in the Olympic National Park. I decided to stop in Quinault for the first time and took a random road that dead-ended at a beautiful spot at the edge of Quinault River. There was an ancient footbridge that led across the river, but it looked like it might collapse if I tried to cross it, so I decided not to. It was off-season, and I was not in a tourist area. I was the only one there. It was so unusually hot outside that I decided that I needed to get in that water. I backed my car all the way to the edge of the dead-end road, faced it out in the direction I would need to leave, and started hiking through thick brush, down an embankment to the edge of the water. There was no path. It was a pretty rugged area. It was mid-fall, and I didn't have a suit since I didn't plan on swimming, so I just took my clothes off and got in the water in my bra and underwear. I had a nice swim, but I could not shake the feeling that I was being watched, even though I was in the middle of nowhere. After about 5 minutes, the creepy feeling was enough for me to want to head back, so I started to climb out, turned my back to the other side of the river, and walked toward my clothes and shoes that I'd left behind. When I turned around, there was a big, tall man standing in plain view, just across from me on the other side of the river, but higher up on his embankment than I was on mine. He was wearing a poncho made of animal pelts, had long hair full of sticks and twigs, and looked like he had been living out in the wild for a very long time. We stood and stared at each other. All of a sudden, he frantically took off in the direction of the footbridge leading across the water. I grabbed my car key, tried to grab my clothes and shoes, but they got tangled in some blackberry vines, so I left everything and went running for my life through the thick brush and blackberries, barefoot in my underwear, trying to make it to my car before he made it across the river. There was no doubt in my mind that he was trying to harm me. When I made it out of the blackberries, I could see he was crossing the bridge toward me rapidly. I got to my car and flung my door open just as he arrived. I locked the doors while he pounded on the hood of my car, just screaming and grunting non-verbally. The moment he went for my driver's side door, I hit the gas and took off as fast as I could. I looked back and he was chasing after me. He must have run after my car for at least a mile until he faded from view. I was bleeding everywhere from running nearly naked through blackberries. I was wet, unclothed, shaking and crying. Had I hesitated for literally 10 seconds longer, I don't think I would have made it out alive. Even typing this story out again all these years later, I am starting to shake. I felt like I was being hunted. That's the only way I can describe it. I will never ever go back to that area. Since that moment, I always bring a hiking buddy with me when I venture out into the forest. That day is going to haunt me for life. I've had many years of therapy, and that experience is still as vivid as the day it happened. My friend and I would go camping pretty often near a pond in a big clearing that pretty much nobody knew about. We had never seen signs of anyone else being there, and it's hard to get to. It is on the edge of a national park or forest in California. One morning, when we pulled the truck up to the area, we parked before the hike in. We see 2 mountain lions having sex. That alone was enough for us to just call the trip a loss and turn back. But we decided to stick around for a bit to watch the lions. They finished up their business pretty quickly and kind of just hung around the area, so it was cool to see them. After about 10 minutes, they perk up and are on alert. We have the windows up, obviously, so we can't hear anything. They get scared and run off, and from the direction they ran away from, 3 deer come running through with a big-ass bear chasing them. We haven't been back to that spot. A buddy and I were on a camping trip in the Padre Canyon outside of Fort Collins, Colorado. It was late in the season, so all the campgrounds were closed. We found a random spot off a random road. Both of us have a ton of experience and have camped all over Colorado and Utah, but something about this particular spot was just off. Almost immediately, we found a blanket wrapped around a deceased skeletal animal. We assumed it was just a pet that someone had thrown out, but It set the mood. We went hiking, climbed up a few hills, and came across an abandoned tent wrapped up in a tree. I was certain we were going to find a body in it, but it was just filled with notebooks and a sleeping bag. We start hiking down the hill and end up walking down the side very steep. As we are traversing down, we're hit with the smell of death. Nestled into a tree on the side of a very steep hill is a small towel with something clearly inside of it. We leave it be and hike down. This is probably 200 to 300 feet up the side of a steep hill with the towel in a tree facing the top of the hill, clearly intentionally put there. We get down some bourbon, build up some courage, and hike back up. Grab a stick, open the towel. Inside, a very recently deceased owl. Somehow, someway, someone had killed this owl, wrapped it in a towel, hiked up a steep hill, off a random mountain road, and stuck it beside a tree. We started a fire, slammed the bourbon, and got the fuck out of there in the morning.
All right, Juan. I got your message. Thank you. I don't think I'm gonna wear makeup unless you meant it like for like creepy stuff, but that's not me. But anyway, thank you. And yeah, everything's good. We're in the throes of a holiday schedule that is daunting between work and everything else, but I hope you guys are all doing well. I read some of your early holiday wishes, and thank you very much. And there'll be more to come in the next couple of days, but I hope you guys are having a great time. And I'm always grateful for each and every one of you. So talk to you soon.
First time ever camping. It was for a field trip in 7th grade. God, I was miserable and I hated it, and didn't want to be away from home. It was about 5 hours away. I couldn't sleep, so I got up in the middle of the night and walked outside and sat with a little book light to read in front of the cabin. I was so obsessed with Christopher Pike at that age. Holy shit. Anyway, I was super unnerved, but I couldn't stand going back into that cabin and laying on this stupid, awful wooden manger-type cot. So I stayed right there by the door. I had this weird feeling like I was being watched, but felt safe enough because it was camp. But every now and then I could just stop glancing up. It just felt weird. I can't explain it. Like hair in the back of your neck standing up weird. I guess I happened to move my book just right because the light caught on a pair of glowing eyes, like an animal, right in front of me. As a kid, I felt like they were right in front of me, but must have been down the steps and a few yards back, because I dropped the book and the light fell off to the side. I could just barely see that it was a goddamn mountain lion. I couldn't even see the full thing at first, just a paw, but then I followed it up. It saw me, and I saw it, and I couldn't move. In my mind, I knew two things. One, if I didn't move, someone was going to find a blood trail, and then my half-eaten corpse, and two, if I got attacked by a mountain lion because I was doing something I wasn't supposed to, my dad would be so mad. I have no idea how long I fumbled. It couldn't have been more than a few seconds, but it felt like 10 years. I reached up behind me until I found the door handle and twisted until I fell into the cabin backwards, closed the door, and got back into my stupid bed and laid there until sunrise. One girl woke up, and I just told her the wind must have made the door bang. In the morning, our teacher came to wake us up, and I got in trouble for leaving my library book outside. I didn't want to get in even more trouble, so I didn't tell anyone what happened. When I was a kid, maybe 10, my parents took our family of 4 to Mark Twain National Forest. We did not go to a campground. For whatever reason, we arrived around dusk, and we had to hurry to set up camp. Soon after, we discovered that we had forgotten a lantern, and it became very dark. My stepfather was an alcoholic and a mean drunk to boot, so there was a lot of yelling, and instead of lighting a campfire, we went to bed. As we all lie there trying to sleep, we begin to hear dead leaves rustle in the distance, as if someone were walking through the forest. Time was passing slowly, as we listened to the sound getting closer. My sister, 12, my mother, my drunk stepdad, and myself were petrified, hoping that since we have no light, and because the person walking through the forest didn't have a flashlight, we may avoid notice. A few moments later, as the sound of shuffled walking was within just a few yards, the stranger stepped on a twig and it snapped. My father belted out a blood-curdling scream, and my mother shrieked, "Let's get out of here." All four of us bolted out of the tent toward the car, my brave parents in the lead. After a few terrifying moments, we reached our Honda Civic hatchback, and we took off for home. We never went back for our things, and I hate camping to this day. I'm 43 and I still dream about this. I found a bone altar once and a severed human hand in 2 different instances. Edit. When I was 8 or 9, my mom took me to a reservoir that I think was it near a national park. She made baskets and things from natural materials, and I went along to help collect. I wandered off a little and I was picking up trash. My mom gave me a nickel for each piece of trash I found, and things in a bag and a basket for collecting things. I saw what I thought was but a discarded glove on the lakeshore and went to pick it up so I could put it in my bag, and, well, it wasn't a glove. It was someone's left hand, from about a few inches the wrist into the arm. The person had been in the water a few days, and I picked up their severed hand. I started screaming, and I guess my hands clenched onto the dead hand. My mom came running and had to pry my hands open to drop it. We went to the closest gas station to call the cops, early mid-90s and pre-cell phones, and they went out and collected it. From what I learned later, there had been a group of drunk teenagers with a power boat, and one had fallen in or something and gotten hit by the boat. I found that chunk of him. They tried to convince me at the time it was a bear paw. I didn't talk for about 2 months and still have problems with recently dead things. As to the bone altar, I went hiking or camping in college, intending to make it to an area in southwestern Colorado. I had a stressful spring semester and needed space from people. I heard a group of people coming as I was heading back and went off into the woods to avoid them. During my detour to avoid them, I got into a patch of thick woods. I ended up coming along, and all I could call was an altar of sorts made out of all kinds of bones of different creatures. It was sort of table-shaped, and someone had strung up different bones and bits of metal on strings all around the area. I was so creeped out, I backtracked to the trail and got back to my car and left as quickly as I could. Haven't gone camping since. Back in 2010, I was doing a solo bike camping trip through Gifford-Pinchot National Forest in Washington State. Doing a backroads trip from Portland to Seattle using the Baby Shoe Pass route if you're familiar with the area. One day, I was near Big Tire Junction and looking for a campsite. My plan was generally to find a random Jeep trail and follow it until I saw a good campsite. The first trail I tried, I ran into a bear, so I rang my bike bell a bunch and scared it away. I turned around to find a new trail. I eventually did and found a good spot on a random Jeep trail about 50 miles from the closest human habitation. I was at about 4,200 feet, so the mosquitoes were horrible. I hadn't brought a tent, so I crawled into my bag around 8:30 for some respite. Maybe 20 minutes after I went to bed, I heard an engine. I peeked my head out and saw a truck driving down the trail. I locked eyes with the guy driving it as he passed my camp and disappeared a bit down the road. I pulled out my map and confirmed that the trail I was on ended after descending the canyon for a mile or two. What is this guy doing? Why is he here so far from literally anything? Then I realized there were 2 humans on planet Earth who knew where I was. Me and this guy doing God knows what in the middle of a giant forest, an hour away from any town or main road. Holy shit. I was pretty freaked, but ended up staying put. 30 minutes later, he came back up the trail, drove past me and vanished. I had a hard time sleeping that night, as I was nervous about the bear and the weirdo, but nothing happened. The next night, I camped at an abandoned campground near Takalak Lake. Despite a massive berm placed by a forest service, some yahoos arrived and proceeded to get wild and drunk and started blasting away with their guns. They definitely didn't know I was there. Again, I hunkered down and woke up at 5 a.m. the next morning to slip out before they woke up. Weird trip, but damn, do I miss having that kind of life where I could spend a week riding a bike in the woods alone. Sort of. Theodore Roosevelt was a hunter, but being such an avid outdoorsman, a biologist, and a historian, he was one of the few to recognize the failing patterns of large game. He knew that something had to be done to preserve the diminishing number of game. While he loved hunting, it wasn't just so he could continue to hunt. He truly loved large animals and wanted to see them thriving for all generations to witness. TR also set into place conservation laws that had nothing to do with hunting, such as protecting the Adirondacks in New York before it was cool. But your last point is essentially right. He recognized the value of the land beyond trees and lumber. He knew we had to hold off on our resources long enough for them to become self-sustaining. While national parks are all about preservation and recreation, national forests are all about maintaining resources. They will be used responsibly for timber, grazing, fishing, and mining. That's the idea, at least. My friend was camping near the Appalachian Trail by himself for a few days. One night, as he was walking, he began to develop the sensation that he was being watched, so he looked around and discovered his sensation was correct. The part of the path he was on at that moment was a gravel road, wide enough for a car to be driving down. It was mostly flat at this stretch with a steep incline on the right side, and to the right a few feet up, maybe 15 feet back, there was a pair of big cat eyes. My friend saw a large tree limb on the ground, and without bending over or turning his back to the cat, he wedged his foot under it and kicked it up into the air, catching it with his hand. He then angrily waved it at the cat, shouting to get the hell away, and fortunately it immediately did. Relieved, my friend slept in his car that night instead of his tent, and he ultimately cut the trip short and drove home that morning. It had been too dark to identify what type of cat it was, so he never was able to determine exactly what he had been stalked by. I live next to 2 national forests or parks. From June to July, there was a horrific fire that prompted evacuations. My family had about 3 hours to pack anything of value. Luckily, we didn't end up having to evacuate. So I had just gotten off of work, and so had my dad. I told them we should really consider evacuating. They didn't take my advice at first, but then we saw the mountain burning. First thing I did was get all of our legal documents, birth certificates, medical files, etc. That took about a half an hour. Next, I helped my sister pack and get through her panic attacks. She was 8 at the time. It was absolutely heart-wrenching having to tell her that we can't take all of her stuffed animals, and she had to pack only a few. I had to talk her out of only bringing her stuffed animals. Ended up packing a lot for her because she was just so sad. She ended up settling on a few of her favorites and an elephant stuffed animal she got from an ambulance when she was 4. Next, I checked on my other sister. She was oddly calm. She packed everything she wanted into a small bag and that was it. I went to help my parents, but they told me to go pack my stuff. I ended up packing some expensive stuff like my purse collection. I also packed important items and my artwork and then had a mental breakdown. It was summer and I was on the top floor. I ended up overheating and yeah, it was bad. Next was packing animal stuff. At the time we had 12 hens, 2 guinea pigs, and 2 dogs. We packed food for everyone and started getting stuff together. Harnesses, water bottles, food, bedding, hay, etc. By now the fire was halfway down the mountain. I grabbed the guinea pigs and put them in their transport cage, put them by the door. My dad took a trailer from his boss. I wasn't allowed to help take anything outside, so I have life-threatening asthma as it would have been. Anyway, we eventually got everything moved and taken out, and by then it was night. The fire had gotten to the base of the mountain on one side. We were all exhausted. I asked my parents if we could leave, but they said not yet. I have no idea how I fell asleep, but my sisters and I slept next to the front door that night. It was very mesmerizing. I have no idea why, but I was in a trance. It was midnight, but the flames from the burning mountain lit up the sky. It was in a very eerie and haunting way, almost beautiful.
The orange flames and purple smoke and moonlight. Awful to say, I know, but it was like a painting. Anyways, about 2 a.m. I fell asleep. I read myself to sleep and watched the fire creep toward us. I woke up several times and thought I was dreaming, but gradually the flames were being put out. I woke up very early at about 6 a.m. The mountain was still burning, but the 1,000-foot flames were completely gone. I woke everyone up and we were all so grateful. A few of us were crying for joy. Several local fire departments had set up a fire line that night. That's what saved us. In the end, nobody died. A local firefighter was severely burned, but he's since recovered and is attending physical therapy. He was released from the hospital about a month or two ago. The night before we were prepping for evacuation, a bucket helicopter crashed. Again, nobody died. One house and several government buildings were burned. In total, about 35,000 acres were burned. That's the most horrific thing I've ever seen, though. I think the reason we were so affected by this is because we have had a house fire before. We were so lucky that this time we got to pack and rescue our animals.